Guys, welcome back. In this tutorial, we will talk about the different variations of the for loop that we have. So there are three different ways of writing the for loop. The traditional for loop is the one which we have already talked about, where we are going to use the keyword for. Then you have an initialization part, then you have the condition part, then you have the increment or decrement part. And then inside of this for loop, you are going to write the statements that you want to repeat. Okay, so that is the traditional for loop. We have talked about it over and over. So the next one we have is the list or set iteration for loop. Now the list is a different type of data type in Salesforce. It is basically a collection. So list is a collection of elements and set is also a collection of elements but without any duplicate. Okay, and we will talk about the list and set and all that in the upcoming tutorial. But think of a list as a variable that can hold multiple values. Okay, so integer we talked about is going to hold of one value. It can point to 100, it can point to 50, it can point to 2, but it is going to have only one value. Whereas a list means it will have multiple values. For example, if I wanted to store the names of the students in my class, then what will I do is, let's say there are 30 students. Instead of creating 30 variables to store each of the name, what I'm going to create is I'm going to create a list variable of the type string. And this variable will hold all the name of the students because it's a collection. It can hold more than one element. That is what a list variable is. In the case of list, you can have duplicates. So I can have a student which has the name twice names such as Ram or Sham. But in the case of set, you are not allowed to have duplicates. You cannot have duplicates. That is a difference between a list and a set. List is an ordered collection of elements and it's a group of elements. So that is what the list is. So there is a list or set iteration for loop where you are going to iterate over each and every element of that list or of that set. So for example, here, let's say I have created a list to store the name of all the students in my class. And in order to create the list, I'm used the keyword list. And I'm also going to define what kind of elements that list will have. And you can only have one particular type of elements. Either you can create a list of integer values, you can create a list of string or objects, etc. But you have to specify what the type is. And let's say the name of the variable is, we can say student is equals to new. We are going to use this keyword new list string. This is how you create a list variable. And then you can also specify the different names of all the students that you want. And then by using this for loop, you can display each element of that list. So what do I mean that is, let's go ahead and take a look. So first thing that I will create a list variable which will store the name of all the students. So I'm going to go ahead, list string. So I'm going to create a variable name called employee names and it is new list of string, and here itself I'm going to specify the different names of all my employees. So I'm going to say Pragya, then another employee I have is Vasu, then let's say John. Then let's say Dev. And let's say another one we have is Sam. So now what we have created is, what we have created a list variable, and this list variable, what does it hold? It is a collection of elements, and these are all the different values. So first block is Pragya, then Vasu, then John, then Dev, then Sam. So these are all the elements that are available in this variable, and the name of the variable is employee names. Now we can use this for loop to display each of the elements of this list. How we will do? We will say okay. We will say for for string employee name, and then employee names, and then we are going to say system.debug name is equals to plus employee name. So what we have done here is we have created a list variable. The name of the variable is employee names. Employee names. Now what is this employee name has? Employee name has all of these names. So first is Pragya, it has Vasu, it has John, it has Dev, then it has Sam. So these are 5 names that are stored inside this variable called employee name. It's a list. So each element will be at a particular index, and the indexing of that will start from 0. So this is at index of 0, this is at index of 1, this is at index of 2, this is at index of 3, and this is an index of 4. Okay. So now what we want is we want to display each of the names one by one. So what we are doing is we are using this for loop, and you will use this for loop multiple times in real time. Okay, a lot of time we are going to use this. So please be careful. List is nothing but it's a collection of elements, but the collection of similar type of element. You can't have a name as well as a number. Okay, so you have to specify what kind of list it is. Once you have specified, then the list can only have those type of elements. So you have specified here that my list will contain string values. You cannot now have an integer value inside of this list. It will give you an error. Then what we are using is we are using a for loop, and we are iterating over this employee names one by one. So in order to hold this value one by one, we have created a variable of the type string because the list is of the type string. So that's why we have created a list. That's why we have created a string variable, and we call it as employee name, and then we are displaying the employee name. So first time this employee name will be pointing to what? To this Pragya. then it will display you Pragya. Next time this employee name will point to Vasu, then this it will display Vasu. Then next time it will point to John, so it will go ahead and display John. Next time it will point to Dev, so it will go ahead and display Dev. And then employee name is pointing to the Sam, and it will display Sam. So this is how the for loop will work. So we are saying for each of the values in employee name, we are iterating over the values one by one. And first time employee name will pointing to Pragya, then it will pointing to Vasu, then it will pointing to John, then it will point to Dev, then it will point to Sam, one at a time. Then we are displaying the employee name. Okay, so now let's go ahead and hit the execute button. Let's first erase this. Now we will hit the execute button. Okay, sorry. Now we will hit the execute button. Go to debug only. We'll see here. First time will display Pragya, next is Vasu, then John, then Dev, then Sam. So this is called as a list or a set loop. So it will go over each element of the list or each element of the set one by one, and we will display them. So since we have created the list of the type string, so this variable which will hold the name one by one will be of type string. So for example, another example is, let's say I create the list to store the employee IDs. List integer employee ID, and let's say new of list integer, and let's say 10011, then we have 12,000, then this is the John's ID, and let's say this is Dev ID, and Sam ID is, let's say, this. So we have created the variable called employee IDs, and this is what it holds. It holds all these values. And I want to display each of these values one by one. So I will use what? I will use for loop. We call it as set iteration for loop. So now I'm going to say for wait, for integer. Now because one by one I'm going to use display these values. What kind of values are these? So you have created a variable integer employee ID which will go over this whole list one by one. Employee IDs, and then we will display the value of employee ID. System dot debug employee ID plus emp ID. This is what's going to display. Hit the execute. Go to debug only. So now you can see here It's going to display 10011 then 12,000 and these all the different IDs. So what happened here is we have created a variable called employee IDs. Okay, so this is the variable and it is holding all these values 1 2 10011, then 12,000, then 12222, then 34561, then 34213. So these are all the different values which are available in all this variant called employee IDs. Now we want to display each of these employee IDs one by one. So what we have did is we have created the loop for and we have iterating over the employee IDs. Employee IDs. And in order to store one value at a time, what we did is we are creating an integer called employee ID. You can call it whatever you want, employee ID. And so first time this employee ID will be pointing to this, and for the next iteration it will pointing here, the next iteration it will point here, then next iteration it will point to this values and this, and then just we are displaying the value of this employee ID. So that's what the output of the program is. So first time 10011, then next time would be this value, then the third time the employee ID will be pointing to this, fourth time will be pointing to this, and fifth time will be pointing to this. So it will display all the elements of the list one by one. So that is what the list called. List or set iteration for loop. So the SOQL for loop will talk about when we learn about the queries. Okay, so how do we write the SOQL queries? So that's when the SOQL for loop will go. So we'll go over the result of the query one by one and then we'll display it. So that is the another type of the for loop we have. So we talked about the list and set iteration for loop. We'll discuss lists and set in great detail in upcoming tutorials. But just to give you an overview, list is nothing but it's a collection of elements. Collection of similar type of elements. So let's meet in the next tutorial. Till then, bye. Have a good day.